In this podcast, we chat about Boro's win against Reading, Kieran Scott's interview with the Northern Echo, we chat Boro's latest transfer news, we look ahead to Blackburn with Ollie from Rovers chat, and always we answer your podcast questions. This is the Boro Breakdown podcast, and this is our Boro Matchday Chatter in a pod.
Wants support. Curtis Fleming is there on the edge of the area. Fleming for Craig Hignett. Hit it, Higgy. Higgy hits the treble!
Ravanelli coming alive again. Janino wants the ball played to him. Ravanelli spots out Emerson!
Hello and welcome to the Boro Breakdown podcast with Johnny, Dana and Tom. We are the Boro podcast that gives you all your Boro Matchday Chatter in a podcast. And this week, a late Matt Crooks double helped Boro get to their seventh win in 8 games and move to 6th in the championship table. 7 points off the top 2. We can believe. But guys, what an ending to yesterday's game. How are you feeling in as many words as you want? Dana, go on. You can go first.
I just bloody love this Boro team. I really do. I mean, I said to you yesterday before the game, didn't I, that if we win this game, forget the Blackburn game, if we win this game against Reading, then we are the real deal. Because for me, it was just as much down to quality as it was mentality. And we had to have our mentality spot on yesterday. You look at the difference between the two sides. Nobody could have been blamed for thinking that it was going to be a rout at the Riverside yesterday. Look at the position, 7th versus 21st before the game kicked off. Form last 6 games, 2nd versus 19th. XG was in Boro's favour, 4th versus 22nd. Expected goals against, the same in Boro's favour, 22nd versus 3rd. Boro unbeaten in 7, Reading winless in 5. It was a trap. It was a trap of a game, and I never fell into the trap of thinking it was going to be easy or straightforward. And I mean, to be fair, I never thought it was going to end the way that it did. But there was always that belief. And I think that's the biggest thing about Chris Wilder's Middlesbrough is that he is making the fans believe. And I genuinely believed yesterday that we were going to turn that game around. And yeah, just unbelievable scenes. The Riverside went absolutely mental. East Stand scenes, which are quite spectacular when the East Stand has limbs. So yeah, it was unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable.
Unbelievable for Dana. Tom, how are you feeling?
Oh, I mean, I was relieved at the end, but the feeling I had was quite different to what Dana's just summed up there. And I think it just kind of comes down to how we've been conditioned in recent years under past managers. Because at 1-0, as soon as that goal went in, all I was thinking of was, I called this last week on the pod, and I've never been more unhappy to be right. Absolutely hated Andy Carroll scoring against us and coming to celebrate in front of us. And I was like, it's going to be one of those games. They've got that. They're going to shot everyone behind the ball now, which they pretty much did. I think everyone except, towards the end, it was everyone except Lucas Zhao, which was back for them. I just thought it's going to be one of them games. They're going to try and see it out. Then we got the goal in the 84th minute, and I was thinking, okay, you know what, from that position, I'd have maybe accepted a point. Like, it's not what I wanted from the game. And then the last minute winner, I just kind of didn't feel coming. So I think it's a bit of a strange feeling, like with this Boro team in comparison to what we've had in recent years, where it had been more kind of on like, so right, we take a point from it, and I don't know, it's for some fans, I think, kind of a change in mentality when we're in certain positions at the moment. Like I said, just from having been conditioned with some of the football we've had in the last few years.
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on, Tom. I think that with the mindset point, I think it's the same players that we had under Warnock, and the mentality to go into the game, try and turn it on its head, and that belief and the desire to try and win the second ball really quickly, get on the front foot, cause problems, and like what you've both said there, I think as soon as Boro got that equaliser, you knew fine well they were going to win the game, and it was so nice to see that. And we haven't had that feeling for last 5-6 years, I think, under Karanka, where we thought it doesn't matter if we concede first, we'll still score probably 2 or 3 and we'll end up winning it. and it was just real relief. And I think for me, we're going up. We're going up. There's nothing anyone can do to stop it from happening. We're going up, and obviously, I'm joking. I think there's a long way to go, but
Are
this
you though?
nah, my hell. I think
Love
the
it.
development we've had from since Wilders came in, the 10 games he's had as manager, to win 7 of them, and to win them in such a way that we've been pretty much faultless for majority of the games. Yeah, I think yesterday was a bit off in comparison to previous games, but overall, I thought we were brilliant. At times, and also throughout his reign so far. I think even that game we lost against Preston, we probably should have won, and probably against Millwall, we should have won. So the form that we're in is absolutely fantastic. But let's chat about the game then, because Chris Wilde made 3 changes to the side that beat Blackpool on the 28th of December, with Connolly, Taylor, and Hauser coming in for Bamba, Peltier, and Ornel Hernandez, who was just left for Birmingham. But Tom, what's your thoughts on the changes that Chris Wilder made, and how do you think Connolly fared as well, especially on his debut?
Well, obviously the Hernandez one was kind of enforced, but the other two, I think they were the right moves. I think at the time when we played Blackpool, there was a lot of games all in at one point, so obviously Taylor couldn't fitness wise be risked for most of them. But I thought he did really well yesterday. Housen, I thought, never stopped moving yesterday. I think that was kind of exemplified by when we're trying to play out from the back and it's going across the back line. He's constantly switching in between the channels between the press and strikers yesterday. And also Connolly, I thought his movement was good yesterday. Got in a position for a couple of good chances. Which unfortunately he didn't score. It would have been a dream for him to do that in his debut, but encouraging performance from him, I think. And the more kind of match fitness he gets, kind of going forward, the better. And I'm sure he probably will take those chances because he was already in the position for him yesterday.
There's definitely rooms for improvement. But Dana, when new signings come in, do you think it can potentially disrupt the balance of the team? I appreciate we've seen it last year a little bit when a lot of signings came in. Middlesbrough got worse, even though the players that we brought in were probably better quality. But do you think the balance could be disrupted with this side, given that we're probably going to bring in a couple more signings as well?
It can potentially be disrupted, but it's about the approach of it, I suppose. I mean, I think Chris Wilder was right not to put Balogun in from the start. I quite like the fact that he started him on the bench. Obviously, there were issues with Riley McGree's registration from the MLS, so that's why he wasn't involved. But Connolly has obviously been here since, what is it, the 2nd of January, so he has had a lot of time to be bedded into the Chris Wilder way of playing on the training ground, and it was probably the right decision to play Connolly and to bench Balogun. I actually kind of want Boro to approach Balogun very similar to how we did with Patrick Bamford. I don't really expect him to be thrown straight into the starting lineup just because he's from a top Premier League team, or I say top Premier League team, just because he's from Arsenal. I'm not expecting him to be in the side straight away. So it's good that we manage his minutes and transition him into the team bit by bit, I think. Although he did look good yesterday when he came on.
Yeah, I was about to say that. I think his technical ability is absolutely outstanding. I think there was one moment where I think it was Taylor fired a ball into him, or it might have been Tav, and he just cushioned it down so lovely, and then just play the ball around again. And I was like, oh, that was absolutely wonderful. It's so good. But Tom, do you think, right, like Dana was probably alluding to it there, do you think Boro should be a little bit careful about bringing these players in straight away? Obviously, we can manage Balogun similar to Bamford, but obviously you've got Connolly there, and you've got Riley McCree as well, who's just came in, probably more players to come. But yeah, do you think we should be a little bit more careful?
Maybe not more careful, but I do think Wilder is already being careful. Something we didn't just mention there was the fact that Balogun just had COVID. I think it was actually something Wilder mentioned in his pre-match press conference that he probably wasn't going to be able to play a full game. That said, Connolly's been with us a couple of weeks and would have been in training, so probably deserved the start from what he's done. But I do think, kind of based on what's just happened with Balogun, we were probably being careful there. In terms of McGree, it's difficult because, as Wilder said on Friday, specifically talking about Pierrot, you need to wait until one of that midfield three becomes undroppable. And I do think McGree's kind of the competition for Tav in that midfield three. I don't think Tav's droppable at the moment. So I don't think there's any way you kind of starting McGree from that point on. I think he's going to have to kind of work his way in from the bench and take his chance when it comes.
We're going to chat about Tav in a moment, but let's chat about the game in general then, because you said at the start of the show that it could have been a potential banana skin. All the odds were in Boro's favour, and it very much could have been a banana skin when Andy Carroll headed home. But what was your overall assessment of the game?
It was a difficult one for Boro because I think in the first half in particular we tried to overcomplicate things, and Reading sat back. They had quite a low block, and it was difficult for us to break that down. We had to be patient. I kind of knew 20 minutes into the game it was going to be one of those. It was going to be really difficult for Boro to kind of get that golden chance, if you like. And I actually thought, in fairness to them, I know they're depleted in terms of injuries and they're playing Josh Laurent, a midfielder, at centre half again. It was a good job that I think they did, to be fair, against Jones. Jones was guilty of maybe trying to do too much sometimes, and I think that was a theme throughout the whole of the team, to be honest. Connolly was guilty of it as well. I think CROOKS was as well as that. But it was just a game that required patience, and in the second half, it was a weird performance from Middlesbrough because I actually thought Reading came out probably with the confidence that they'd held us to 0-0 at half time, with a little bit more confidence. And I think they came out, they drove that confidence into their performance in the second half. And yeah, our second half performance it wasn't great, but then we just had that desire again. It's all about desire with the Chris Wilder team to get back into the game, and we got that second goal. The equaliser, and then we got the second goal after that. And I mean, you just can't write us off of that. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely. So Tom, how would you assess things as well? Because it was like Dana was alluding to there. It was a game for Boro that it seemed to be a bit. It wasn't the same Boro side that we've seen over the last few weeks. But how would you assess things?
Yeah, I think there was maybe a couple of outside factors impacting on yesterday's game. I think the fact that although that is arguably our strongest 11, hasn't played together since Blackpool. Obviously, there's been COVID hit the squad, and also on the other side of things, there's Reading who probably playing for pride after midweek, after getting absolutely hammered by Fulham and getting knocked out by Kidderminster last week in the FA Cup. I do feel like that low block and trying to kind of keep us out for most of the first half was that they didn't want to see a repeat. They wanted to be a lot stronger, and you could see that in the performance, and particularly as Dennis was saying in the second half there, when they came back out, they probably were buoyed by the fact that they hadn't conceded within that first 45. I do think like our passing and kind of pressing, I think in the first half was a little bit off, like say 1-2 seconds.
I agree.
I think there were a few kind of misplaced passes. A lot of our chance creation was coming from overloads down the right hand side, but the crosses weren't particularly good. And then when there were, obviously we had the chance with Sprar, which was saved by their keeper, then ricocheted back off the defender and hit the post. So don't know how that stayed out, but yeah, we seem to control the game a lot in the first half without ever kind of really threatening, because our chance creation was, like I said, just 1 or 2 seconds behind, and that didn't really seem to kick in until like the latter stages of the second half, where we started kind of becoming the Boro we used to. But I think it's also kind of worth noting that possibly our standards have changed now over the last few games, because I was looking at some Reading perspectives on the game yesterday, and they all think like we actually played really well. And for us, we're kind of sat here thinking we definitely weren't at our best. We've had performances better than that in the last few games, but we'd kind of expect it to be more around those levels. And I think it kind of just goes back to what I was saying earlier about kind of being conditioned with certain things. Like it's probably got to the point now where, like I say, our standards are higher because of how we've been playing. But like even when we've been playing poorly, other teams still think we're playing well.
Yeah, it is that change, isn't it? I think when you look at the Boro side, probably from the last 8 games of Warnock to the last 8 games, or I said last 10 games of Warnock, first 10 games of Wilder, there is a complete shift in performances in general. I think Middlesbrough's performances have got a lot better, and I think it's mainly just down to the shape, the mentality, the management, and tactical side of things. I think the difference between Warnock and Wilder is I think Warnock was successful as a manager because he was able to get the basics right, and when he got the basics right with the team, and they did them very, very well, you were able to kind of build momentum and then probably try and get the promotion in this type of division. But when you've sometimes got a manager who does the basics so well and then has that tactical ability, then you've got someone who can really just flourish in this division and then flourish in the division above. And I think that's the reason why Warnock did really poor in the Premier League, because I just don't think he had that tactical ability in him in comparison to Wilder. But like Tom was saying there, Dana, for about 67 minutes, all of the possession Boro had, we really struggled to break Reading down at times, didn't we? Even though we had the one or two chance. But why do you think that was? What did Reading do which made things difficult?
Well, a limited space in between the lines. So I often saw, as we usually do, Andres Bra kind of drop deep to receive, but there was just not really space for the pass to be on. And then they also had a four-man press whenever we were trying to build out from the back. So you saw Andy Carroll, John Swift, Tom Deli-Bashiru, and Junior Hoylett, who, again, I just always think of him being in that camera pit at QPR. I can't get it out of my head. He's just like in my head right now. He's just sliding into that camera pit. But they were trying to press whenever we were trying to build up from the back. So I think they cut a lot of the passing lanes off for us. And I mean, they were content with just kind of sitting back, and they knew what they were coming to with Boro in such good form. It was just a case of, I suppose, frustrating us. And they did that. And then you talk about the right-hand side and how dominant we've been down there. They doubled up on us, in fairness, down that side. But then as the game wore on, I think they wore down and they got progressively tired. I think they retreated. And I believe they've lost 15 points from winning positions. So they're a team that you can really get at their fragile kind of mentality. And then Boro's winning mentality, as we spoke about in the last podcast, really came to the fore yet again. And it was just one of those games that required patience. And I know it's difficult because they were, my patience was being tested yesterday, but I did trust them. I do trust this Boro team, and I trust what Wilder's trying to do. But yeah, Reading, in fairness to them, given the fact that they've come off the back of a 7-0 Tonkin and then got beat by Kidderminster and knocked out the FA Cup, really low confidence. But I think their game plan, to a degree, was working. And then obviously they just sat back and they're tired.
Yeah, well, when I was speaking to Matt yesterday from the Elm Royal podcast, he was saying that they tend to just keep sitting, going back and back and back and back, and then they just tend to cave. But they've been doing that, like you were saying, they're down 15 points from winning positions. They just seem to try and get that goal, and then they're just kind of like, okay, let's just protect it at all costs. And I think sometimes that can really hinder a side, because sometimes when you're ahead, you kind of need that killer goal to finish games off. But then what Dana was saying there, Tom, around having that low block, the deep press, the cut in the passing lanes, making things difficult. If you look at Boro's average position throughout the game, we're very, very advanced in comparison to previous weeks, was probably just due to the amount of possession we had. But tactically, how can Boro improve things when they play against a team like that? Because when they're going to come at the Riverside, like we see under Cranker, teams are going to sit in, they're going to make things difficult. What can Boro do tactically to try and improve on that?
I think it comes back to something Dana said earlier, and it's just patience. I think, as you mentioned there, it used to happen a lot under Karanka, and fair enough, it's a different style of play. But I can't remember where I heard this before. I think it might have been something to do with Barcelona's style. But make the opponent move around and chase the ball and tire them out. And as it comes to the end of the game, they will be more tired, make more mistakes, and that's where you can kind of strike. I think looking back on that promotion season, a good example of that was the game against MK Dons at home, where we didn't actually score until around the 70th minute. It was Downing. But all the way through that game, like, they didn't really have much of a sniff, really, and it was just a matter of kind of making them work, tiring them out, and then getting to the point where we could pick them off. And I thought it was kind of similar yesterday with Reading. Like I said, we controlled the first half. I think if we were sharper, having not had that COVID layoff, I think if our passing was on point and not kind of a second or two behind yesterday, I do think we would have scored that first half. But obviously, ultimately, we didn't, and it did kind of come down to Reading being more tired and making more mistakes at the end of the game. I mean, they scored with pretty much their only effort. Other than that, I can't really remember them threatening that much.
Yeah, I think sometimes when you have like the possession as well in a game, you're probably more likely to win the game. But when you do that, you try and stretch a team as well. I think when you have a low block as well, you try and use your width as much as you possibly can, cause the overload, and try and get in behind. I think what was very interesting for Boro yesterday, and I think you've both mentioned it, is that the average position for Boro, it was so high yesterday. It looked like when we did get the ball, and we had the possession, we were trying to cause the overload on the centre halves because obviously they were playing as a 4, having 2 centre halves. We were having a 1v1 in the 2. Then also you would just see Tav peel off just behind that half space between the centre back and the right back, and then you'd have Crooks on the other side. And it was just really interesting because when you do have those overloads, you do create space, and then that's where your chances come. And I think both of Boro's goals yesterday came from that overload from Crooks coming into the box, trying to make things difficult for the centre back. And I think when you look at Danny Drinkwater and you look at the other centre midfielder and you look at their positions for both goals, I think it's really poor on them there front. I think they'd be disappointed with that. But for 68 minutes, Tom, when Andy Carroll headed home and scored off Reading's only shot on target from the game so far, disappointing the way we've conceded there. Do you think it was just Middlesbrough were pushing so many bodies forward, they left in the space and behind, and they allowed Reading to break and score from us? But do you think we can improve on that defensive on that error really?
Yeah, I mean, the disappointing thing is, last week when I said it's nailed on that Andy Carroll's going to score and it's going to be 1-0, that's exactly the way I imagined him scoring, just looping header like that. The only kind of disappointment for me from that was the fact that Fry had kept him quiet the entire game. I thought aerially and physically as well, Fry was a match for him and more. Even when Carroll was winning aerial duels, they weren't really kind of going anywhere. And I think that says a lot about how good Fry was playing yesterday. But the guy Carroll outjumped for that header was McNair. So, obviously the only kind of change I would have liked in that situation would be Fry to Mark Carroll, because I don't think that goal would have happened in that scenario. But then, of course, it kind of just goes back to the man marking and just kind of find a way to make that work against a team that has such an aerial threat as Carroll. I don't think it would work kind of as Warnock was using it, where everyone marks everyone. Yeah, I'd have much preferred Fry to be the one marking him yesterday, because I don't think he'd have scored.
Yeah, it's just like such a typical Andy Carroll goal as well, wasn't it? Like you were saying there, like, yeah, I think the disappointment is probably Fry. Obviously, isn't it? But I think it's a lovely header. I don't think Lumley has a chance really on that. I think just the way he's just looped it over. I think it's a great header, and it was celebrating in the East Stand, giving it the big one, Dana.
The family stand, the family.
It was where I was sat. I absolutely hated him.
Tom, the family stand ultra.
But he did leave a pie on his face though, Dana, because Crooks scoring a header, Tav finally getting an assist as well. We chat a lot about stats versus contribution, but it's been coming, hasn't it? Marcus Tavernier finally getting an assist for you.
Yeah, finally. I mean, there's a goal contribution. Yeah, it was brilliant. Tav has got that in his locker. He's got that delivery in him. And to be fair, he's had a few teasers under Chris Wilder. It's just that nobody seems to gamble on it. And I mean, thank God for Matt Crooks, because how many times have I been defending Tav on this podcast? He finally comes up with an assist. But I will actually say there's a point of note that I found quite interesting. Tav's actually the second ranked player for expected goals in our team per info goal. He's 4.59 XG from 51 shots. So it might be a case of just the accumulation of shots is elevating that expected goals ranking there. But he's got an assist now. He's got that goal contribution. Massive for his confidence that he played a big part in the comeback. My question is there a goal coming? Because I feel like there is. He gets into some good positions. Honestly, you watch him, he gets into some good positions on the edge of the box. If he can improve his shooting, which is a massive if, then I think Marcus Tavernier will score very, very soon.
Do you want to put a bet on that Monday?
No, no, I'll not do that actually. But yeah, it's probably a good thing I'm not a betting person, isn't it?
Well, you never know. I'll give you some odds for it if you want. Give you some odds, and then we'll start betting on it. But I think with Tav, and we'll chat about him probably a little bit later on. But he's an interesting player, isn't he, Tav? Because a lot of fans are wanting him on that left-hand side. Do you think he's that central player, or do you think he's a wide player? Dan? What would you prefer Tav to be in?
Yeah, we got a question very similar to this from Liam. And for me, I think he's a central player, but out wide, he's definitely somebody that can do a job. I'm just not sure that it would get the best out of him. I think his future is central midfield because I just think he's got that drive. He's got that great balance that a Chris Wilder team needs. And it's no wonder to me that he is in the team and has been consistently because he's got such good energy and drive. And Chris Wilder said it after the game yesterday that he thinks he's a top player. He just needs that ball to roll, and it has now with that assist. So hopefully we can see a lot more from him. But for me, I would keep him in central midfield.
All right, the case closed. I think the only way, when you play, the way he plays as well, I think where he's on that left, if he played on that left-hand side, he'd have all of the attributes of a left wing back, of getting up and down the pitch, causing problems. But like you were saying, the delivery, this is probably his main issue. Tav flourishes, playing that little central place, cutting in on his left foot, and then trying to play that through ball. I think that's where he flourishes. And I think that's where he should probably stay under Chris Wilder. But it was interesting yesterday because Pierrot was on the bench. Boro were looking for a bit more looking for someone or a spark to try and get Boro through the Reading defence. Tommy, are you surprised that Boro didn't bring on Pierrot yesterday? I mean, I appreciate it did work for a while and not to bring him on, but are you surprised that we didn't even look to bring him on, especially for when Howson got took off?
In hindsight, I'm not surprised, but at the time, I honestly thought he was going to be brought on. He was warming up for a fair amount of time within that second half. I saw him go down the tunnel, come back out, and he was still warming up. I thought Pierrot's coming on here, and you know what? I'm glad this didn't happen, but I thought he was going to come on for Crooks because I didn't think. Like I said, the passing was 1 or 2 seconds behind yesterday, and I thought that link up between Jones and Crooks on the right hand side was just a little bit off at times. They weren't reading what each other were doing as well as they were in other games, and I thought I can definitely see Pierrot coming on for Crooks here and us trying to go for it. But obviously, we didn't go for that in the end. We went for the Steve McLaren tactic of put all the strikers on, and it worked. So. Love a last-minute winner from that Steve McLaren tactic. So, yeah, like I said, in hindsight, not surprised. But at the time, I was very surprised when Coburn was the last substitution.
Getting the captain's armband too.
That was
really
most inspiring tactic in our most inspiring captain in our history for that couple of minutes.
Forget Southgate lifting the trophy, mate. That was peak Middlesbrough right there when Coburn came on.
Love it.
It's like Thor with hammer, like just like when he came on the captain's armband, the ball just started flying at the net. Just like that much power.
Why he shouted, "Bring me Thanos."
We did have a question about Pierrot, Dana, because Jack and Sam both messages are out and they said, "How do you fit Pierrot into this side, or do you think he should be in the side more often?" And why I'm not seeing more of Pierrot. The case of Martin Pierrot, Dana. Why isn't he in the squad? Why isn't he playing?
Well, simply put, Matt Crooks is performing incredibly well at the moment. I think you can make a case for Matt Crooks to be our player of the season so far. I certainly think it's between him and Isaiah Jones. So the way that I look at it, McGree is the competition for Marcus Tavernier and Martin Pierrot is the competition for Matt Crooks. There's a lot of people that have questioned why isn't he being on the left, because he did play on the left whilst Crooks played on the right when they had that partnership together. But the way that Chris Wilder has spoken, and I'm not going crazy talking so much about left footers and right footers. He mentioned it again yesterday after the match about the balance of the team and having left footers on that side and right footers on their respective side as well. So it's all about if Crooks drops an absolute 0 out of 10, then he probably comes into the team. But even if he does, I still don't think that Crooks is out of that side because he's a goal threat, and you know that he's a goal threat. There's potential goal threat in Pierrot, of course. He's already scored this season, but I think you know it more so with Crooks, don't you? And I mean, Crooks has been fantastic this season. It was actually, I think it just sums up Martin Pierrot's look at the moment, because I actually thought Crooks was poor for about 80 minutes of that game before he scored, and then he ends the game with a brace that has won us the match. So, I mean, there could have been a case for could Crooks be dropped for the next game? I mean, I don't think so, but still, there could have been a question of it, of maybe rotation for that Blackburn game, because as I said, I don't think Crooks was great yesterday until he scored, but you absolutely can't drop him after that yesterday.
I don't think you can either. I think when you were saying there Dan, about the left footers and the right footers as well, I think they also when we talk about that as well, I think it's about rotation as well, where if Taylor comes up the pitch, you tend to see Tav drop in on that left wing back role, or it's like vice versa with them both. I think the only thing that we don't have is that left footed centre back, which would probably fit in really, really nice. But obviously McNair's playing so well at the moment, you can kind of get away with it, but it'd be nice to have that left and the right dropping in the rotations and making things difficult for the sides. But the second goal, Tom, wonderful play from Isaiah Jones. Crooks again with the header. Atmosphere absolutely erupted. 7 wins tonight in all competitions. Confidence. What else does it bring to this side? Because the run of form Boro at the moment is absolutely fantastic, isn't it?
Well, I think you just said it there. It's confidence. When I got back to the car yesterday and just switched on the radio, like eagerly waiting to hear what people were saying about it. I got there mid-interview with Crooks, and he was talking about it, and he was just kind of saying it does bring us confidence. It kind of breeds into that mentality where the whole team knows that they can come back from these positions, and I bet they're probably feeling unbeatable at the moment. I think it's probably such a good kind of dressing room to be in, just for that level of confidence and that winning mentality at the moment.
So let's move on to the praise and place then, because the praise and place is our place where we love to praise Boro players. That is an absolute mouthful, isn't it, to say that? But guys, who gets your praise and player this week, or players, or coaching staff this week? Dana, who are you going to praise?
I have to say Tav. I thought Tav yesterday. I thought he was one of the best players on the pitch for us. Obviously, the game overall was difficult for Boro. I don't think there are a lot of top performances, but Tav had the typical drive that we expect from him, the typical dogged performance of balance between attacking and defending. He got stuck in on numerous occasions, tracking back, being aggressive in the press and trying to win the ball back. But also, I mean, he was a man possessed from that point in the game where we were trying to get back into it, and we just had that drive and that hunger to turn the game around. And a big part of that came from Tav. And to be fair, his deliveries, there were a few deliveries before the one that actually resulted in the goal that were decent. And it kind of felt, okay, you've got to get one of these right at some point, or not right, because I think they were good deliveries, but someone has to get their head on one of these, and thankfully Crooks did. I mean, there's a lot of people that just want Tav out the team and can't wait to see him on the bench, but he is so integral to what we do, and he's Marmite. He is a bit of a scapegoat, and I do understand some of the criticisms of him, because one thing that he's been guilty of is maybe overdoing it sometimes. And particularly in the Millwall game, there was a point where he tried to overplay in our own half. And the way that we play with the overlapping centre halves and the underlapping centre halves, you are kind of running the risk of getting caught in a very dangerous counter-attack if you lose the ball in your own half. But what Tav has done, and what I've noticed, he's simplifying his game, and he kept things ticking over yesterday between him and Neil Taylor and Aaron Connolly. And I just thought he was good yesterday. And yeah, I rate Tav. Maybe I've got a bit of a blind spot with Tav because there is a lot of criticism towards him. But I thought he was good yesterday, and I think he deserves his due credit.
Perfect. So Tav for Dana. Tom, who are you going to go for?
Well, I've actually got three. I understand putting 5 fingers up there, but I can't put these 3 down. 3 from yesterday. Tav being one of them. Yeah, I thought I agree with everything Dennis said there, but also just want to kind of give a shout out for something I mentioned a couple of weeks ago as well. His physical work, I think he's getting better at that. Gave a few fouls away yesterday, which I think was probably Reading players playing for it, if I'm being honest, because he was extremely annoyed at the fouls given away, and I can understand why, because they were extremely soft. But I thought he was doing that very effectively yesterday, and that delivery for the first goal, I'd probably go so far as saying like Downing-esque with the cross, because he kind of just like stabbed at the underside of the ball and just it ended up with just the right amount of loft and not too much speed on it for Crooks to get his head on it and kind of power that towards goal. Secondly, Neil Taylor. I thought he did play well yesterday, and I think some of his range of passing, it's a lot different to what Boro offers in that spot, and I'm specifically talking about like where he's kind of playing passes with the outside of his boot, like just to get around the corner from certain areas. I thought his link-up play with Tav and with Connolly was very good yesterday, and also Lumley, which I understand might get kind of some kind of skepticism from some people, but I think it is very clear that he's working on his distribution. It didn't come off so much yesterday, but you can see it. He's constantly looking when he collects the ball to get it out as quick as possible and kind of hit them on the break. And I think it's obvious he's been working on his kicking, because it's a lot more accurate off the floor. And when he is trying to play it out quickly, he's developed this kind of long flat kick, which I think when that comes off right, that's going to be very effective for us. It didn't yesterday on the examples I remember, because I think it was Connolly first half kind of ran the opposite direction from where the kick was aimed, even though he was running that way first. But I think had that come off, that could have resulted in chance creation just from where that was headed. So I think it's obvious that work's going into it there, and fair play. I think he's doing it well.
I just want to shout out Dill Fry for a second there as well, because as what Tom said earlier, I thought he did really, really well. Excuse me, up against Andy Carroll, and yeah, I thought Dill Fry was magnificent, really physical as he needed to be, and that's been a criticism of Dill Fry in the past, that he's been maybe a little bit lightweight. I can't speak today. A little bit lightweight and a little bit weak almost, but I thought he was fantastic yesterday, and to be fair, his performances just keep getting gradually better and better.
So Fry and Tav for you, Dana. Tav Taylor. It sounds like. It sounds like a butter company. Do you know what I mean? Like a spreadable brand. That's what it sounds like, doesn't it?
It does actually, yeah, it does.
Get some white lay on toast. With Tav Taylor and Lumley for you, Tom. I'm gonna go with Anthony Dyke-Steele again, right? And honestly, he's so safe. He's like a house on a pitch. Like, I know, like Isaiah Jones will get all the plaudits, and rightly so. But I think he's only so good and so dangerous. I think it's because of Anthony Dyke-Steele behind him. I think when his positional so good, the way he brings the ball out, he has quiet games, but he's just so consistent, and it's just like it's so good to watch. I think like I was saying, like I think Jones probably is so happy that he has Dyke-Steele with him, because I think if there's any other centre back, or you could probably put McNair in there, but any other centre back, I feel like you probably wouldn't as flourish as much, as because he has to do more defensive work, and I don't think he has to now because Dyke-Steele's so safe there. But yeah, I think it's like 3 weeks in a row, but Dyke-Steele's most praise and place, maybe. I don't know, but maybe he's been absolutely brilliant, and yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if teams are watching him as well, because he's been brilliant. But let's move on. Let's chat about the news of the week. And Kieran Scott spoke to Scott Wilson at the Northern Echo to explain his role in more detail. It's the first time we've seen someone from the club come out and explain this new project that Middlesbrough are building. Dana, are you happy that he's come out and communicated his role and his vision for Boro?
Yeah, definitely. was a good article, to be fair, because it was a good insight into what he does and the clarity, I guess. It's just all about clarity, really, isn't it? And communicating direct lines with the fans, because the fans naturally have an interest in appointments like that, especially given that it's the first that we've done of a head of football. We've never had a head of football before, so it's good that we've heard from him now. And there were some good bits to take out from that article, talking about how obviously he's the last, kind of one of the last pots of call for the recruitment work. They're in the process of hiring a new head of recruitment, which we believe is Andy Scott. That his first role at the club was to identify a new manager, poor Neil Warnock. And yeah, there was some good bits from that, and he was massive in bringing Chris Wilder into the club, and thank you to him for that, because Chris Wilder is a bloody good manager.
Yeah, it was interesting to see him say as well around building a nucleus on and off the field. Is it refreshing to see like Boro move in this direction, because previously under previous regimes that it's just been a lot of ins, a lot of outs, and sometimes the players have stuck around. The staff turnover has been quite poor. Do you think it's refreshing to see Boro like have that more of a stable, progressive future that we've always wanted?
Yeah, 100%. It's about keeping consistency and longevity even through change, and that's all we've really wanted. I think you've spoken about it, Johnny, in a few of your blogs about having that consistency in playing style, and Brighton have it with their head of football, where if Graham Potter leaves, then the next manager that comes in will almost have a seamless transition into that hot seat, because everything behind the scenes will be set up for him. So it's what we've really wanted for a long time. It's the sustainability of the club, I suppose, not this constant chopping and changing of coaching staff, the turnover of players. To be fair, we are seeing that now with Uche leaving not long after he's joined. But hopefully after that, now that Kieran Scott is in, we can see more long-term or mid to long-term vision in mind, rather than just, right, this is who we've got, we don't want him anymore, get rid of him, bring someone else in, completely different style of play. Because that's what we've been guilty of. We've had managers that are a little bit naive, then we've had experience, then we've had inexperience, then we've had experience. And it's kind of like an identity crisis to a degree, and we don't want an identity crisis, Middlesbrough. We want a Middlesbrough that know what they want, that will get what they want, because they have that long-term vision and identity in place.
Yeah, it's absolutely. It all comes down to that new Middlesbrough, the 5 pillars of projects, and when that all fits, you see the success on the pitch, and I think that's what we're seeing, especially now with the way that Middlesbrough are currently performing. And like I was saying, I've said in the blogs previously, I think probably about 3 years, you'll probably see the real fruits of it, to be honest, because Chris Wilder might move on in 3 years. The new manager will come in. You'll have that seamless transition, but then also you'll have a project which is already getting built, and it's just that sustainable model that Middlesbrough will have will be really successful. And hopefully we can see that more success in years to come. But you were saying there, Dana, about signings and people coming in and people going out, and Uche is obviously being made for a transfer. We'll come on that just shortly. But Tom, it was interesting to see Kieran Scott mention about free agents in the summer. Do you think that could indicate why Boro are using the loan market quite a lot in this window? Because, you know, the strikers right now, I think we've got Connolly, Balogun and Sparrow all on loan, of course, and we'll only have one forward in the summer. But do you think that's the reason why Boro are doing that at the moment? Because to try and get cheaper players in the summer, be a bit more financially savvy?
Well, we'll actually have 2 forwards in the summer, and I made this mistake again earlier in the week when I told you guys about it. But it's actually Akpom. Forgot he existed, but he is still contracted to us. So, you know, potentially he might fit into Wilder's system, but who knows? Maybe he'll just stay in Greece. But I do think when the free agent list was mentioned in that interview, and Kieran Scott was saying it's the best free agent list he's seen in a long time in football, I do think that's probably what we're looking for with the strikers. Like you say, we've got 3 on loan strikers. If we go up, fingers crossed, Sparrow will be permanent. But then we've still got more strikers to replace, and I think looking at that free agent list, I think there's a reason he mentioned it, and I don't think it's just strikers that we'll be looking at for that. I think in terms of quality. You know, I trust when Kieran Scott says it is one of the best free agent lists he's seen, because you know he's worked in recruitment for a long time, and I'm sure whoever we've got our eye on for the end of the season, work's probably already going on into that.
There's plenty of options, Don. But let's talk about transfers, because Wilder did reveal that Marcus Brown, Uche, Saliki, and Hernandez were all made available for transfer or leaving the club. Appreciate Saliki is on loan and will look to leave, and Hernandez has already left with Birmingham. So, Denny, were you surprised to see Hernandez go at all? I mean, given that he was kind of a player that really didn't. Well, he did fit Boro's system at times because he was playing up front, wing back. He played pretty much everywhere. But do you think it was the best for the club to move Hernandez on?
Yeah, I think Chris Wilder said that he's on a decent wage, and we probably don't want to be paying somebody to be a square peg in a round hole. And it did feel like Onel Hernandez was that. In fairness, I actually quite liked him up front. I thought his application was good. He's a quick player, so he was pressing. He was making sure that he was running beside the centre halves and causing them problems. But yeah, it never really fit, did he? I think he did play right wing back, and Jacob from Canary Cast, when we signed him, he did a nice video basically detailing what Boro fans can expect. And he did mention that Hernandez has played right wing back before. He played right wing back in that Huddersfield game, and to be fair, he was probably at fault for the goal that we did concede in that match, but probably nitpicky for myself there. But you know what? I actually quite liked Hernandez in the end. I did warm to him. I know I mentioned on a few occasions that he was doing my tits in, but that's not his legacy anymore. I think his legacy at Boro will be the iconic shirt off celebrations, the offside goal celebration with Yusuf in the South Stand. I think his application was fantastic. His attitude was fantastic on the pitch, and yeah, wish him all the best at Birmingham, but just not when we play them at St Andrews.
Yeah, absolutely. Tom, Brown and Uche all being made available in the market. But couldn't you see them moving maybe permanently? Do you think permanent's probably the best move for them both?
Probably, yeah. I think Wilder said it the other day about Uche. You know, in another system, he'd do really well, and his application, his attitude, brilliant and stuff. But he was going to get very limited playing time here. So, for the good of his career, it's probably best that he does go on a permanent, or if that's not possible this window, at least go on a loan to kind of put yourself in the shop window by playing more regular football. Marcus Brown, I think it's a bit of a shame for him, considering the time he's had at Boro with the injury just as he was starting to play well. But he's another one who I think probably doesn't fit this system unless he fancies trying to transition into a wing back. But by the sounds of it, I don't think kind of Wilder thinks he might be able to do that. So yeah, I think for both of them, for the good of their careers, it would be best if they went permanently.
Obviously, Tom, with Kokolo leaving as well on a permanent deal to Burton, could you see maybe any more going as well?
I don't think so. Unless we're talking about kind of any of the players who were already out on loan, if those clubs kind of want to make it permanent. You know, you've got the likes of Akpom, Wing, Gilson out. Obviously, Spence, there's been, I think, come out in the last week saying we're holding on for about 10 mil in the summer, which would be great. But yeah, I can't really kind of see too many other than the ones who were mentioned leaving.
Plenty of Manjaros, Palmos for £10 million, isn't it? So, but there was one player that did come in this week as well, who we haven't mentioned previously. It's Riley McGree, and he comes from Charlotte FC in the MLS, and he was on loan, of course, at Birmingham earlier in the season. But Dana, Celtic did us a lot of favours early in the week because they gave us a nice 23 tweet thread of Riley McGree to see what we need to expect from him. But what do you think we should see from Riley McGree? What can we expect?
From what I've read, somebody that is very similar to Tav in the sense of good defensive work, good energy, good technically, good ball carrying. But I think the difference between the two of them is that McGree seems to have better shooting. I mean, to be fair, I probably have better shooting than Tav. And you should have seen me in foot golf. I was absolutely terrible. But I think McGree is somebody that obviously has potential in him. They were talking about assets. I think Chris Wilder was talking about assets, and he definitely seems like one of them. We were talking to Blues Breakdown about him, and they said that In terms of playing style, he's good technically, excellent ball carrying, can operate in tight spaces, lovely feet and a sweet left peg. Not overly creative, probably see him more as an advanced 8 than a true number 10. Somebody that will drive the side of the pitch, but not one who's going to unlock the door. So from that, I take from that he's probably not going to be one that racks up the assists. He'll probably end up scoring more goals than he does assists. But somebody that I think is definitely going to transition Boro through the middle third to the final third, and not necessarily be the one to, as Blues Breakdown put it, unlock the door, but maybe is the one that starts the move, not necessarily the one that makes the pass that kind of breaks through a defence. But yeah, excellent athlete, always moving, decent pace, happy to do the defensive side, and an all-round team player. And then crucially as well, he is left-footed. And Chris Wilder did mention yesterday that he wants more left footers. So a massive tick on the box. It was quite a point of entertainment seeing the Celtic fans fume about it. But in and amongst all of their rage, they did forget, whilst they were calling it an unambitious move, that we do have the potential of playing in the Premier League next season, which is what Riley McGree said that is obviously decided the move, essentially. So yeah, a big carrot dangled in the face of Riley McGree there, and thankfully we've got him on board.
Yeah, well, obviously Chris Wilder saying that he wants a lot of left backs. I might put my CV in, or like left footers, because you know.
You are left footed, yeah.
I am a lefty, so I mean, Chris, if you're watching, I am available. I've got a terrible injury record, but and then really fucked knees. But anyway, I'll still sign. Tom. Jack sent us a message, and he said about McCree, and he said about that left wing back spot, because Wilder did mention as well that he could potentially play there, and he's really happy with that midfield three. Could you see him maybe move to that left wing back role as well?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that he mentioned that. I'm not kind of sure how many times he's played left wing back in the past, but I think, as Dana said earlier, he is likely the competition for Tav in that left of the midfield free spot. I think if he was to play left wing back, it would be if we were having a bit of a crisis there and we didn't have Bowler or Taylor. He could potentially kind of slot in there and do the George Savile role of a centre mid doing a left wing back spot. But I think he's been signed with an eye on putting him in the left of that midfield three and being the competition for Tav.
Well, it could have that George Savile role of left wing back if need be, isn't it? So it's kind of like that position. But let's look ahead to Monday now then, because Boro's next fixture is against Tony Mowbray's high-flying Blackburn Rovers, who are top of the form charts, just above us. So to understand a little bit more about the opposition, we asked Ollie from the Rovers Chat podcast to give us a bit more insight on Blackburn Rovers.
Hello Middlesbrough fans, hello everyone at the Boro Breakdown. I hope you are all well. I'm Ollie Walker-Peel and hoping to provide a bit of insight for you on Blackburn Rovers. It's been an immense season for us so far, but before I start, I would like to thank Johnny and everyone at the Boro Breakdown for having me on. Just like the reverse fixture, it's great to be on the podcast as always. So let's have a look at Rovers then this season. We've been absolutely unbelievable after that Fulham loss. Obviously, we weren't much talked about. There was talk, especially in our fan base, that Tony Mowbray wasn't the right man to take us forward as a football club. And how were we proven wrong? We have been unbelievable since that game. Unbeaten in the league since that Fulham game. Obviously, we did lose in the Cup to Wigan, but we're not reading too much into that. And I'm recording this just after we've beaten Cardiff. So we do have a game in between that and Middlesbrough. We've got Hull. So hopefully our unbeaten run is still intact by the time we play Middlesbrough. But we have been absolutely unbelievable. Third in the league at the moment, putting pressure on the top two to keep winning games. It's been an unbelievable run, and hopefully it continues after the Boro game from a Rovers point of view. In terms of key players to look out for, if you are a Boro fan, of course, everyone's going to be looking at Ben Brayton Diaz. So I'm going to mention him, but I'm not going to talk about him too much in depth because that's a boring answer, and I want to give you something that maybe maybe a little bit left field. But for me, John Buckley is an unbelievable footballer, underrated, and he's absolutely quality. Perhaps wasn't at his best against Cardiff, but when he's on song, you'll know about it. One of the most underrated players in the league. I could mention about the whole team for Rovers. Joe Rothwell was another one. Again, not much happened in the Cardiff game, but one moment of magic, a wonderful run, and a curling finish that went beyond the Cardiff goalkeeper and put us 1-0 up. and that was the ultimate deciding factor. So we've got players on every single line that can do things. So it's more of it's the question is more who not to watch, because any of our players can hurt you, and it's looking good from a Rovers point of view. At that point, transfers, both sides have done some really good business. I'm actually really liking what Boro have done. Obviously, being based in Australia, there's been a lot of talk about Riley McGree. A lot of fans thought that he would go to Celtic, but I actually think the Boro move's a better move for him. I think Boro obviously fighting for promotion, massive club, so I think that's going to work out well for Riley McGree, and I think you're going to get a lot out of him. So I think that's a really good deal. Also impressed with the Florian Balogun signing from Arsenal. So I think Boro have done some really, really good business. In terms of ours, we've signed Dave Alciose Falk, who's a right back from Hertha Berlin, who I'm really happy with. We're rumoured to sign Dylan Markande from Tottenham. That one looks far down the line. Who's obviously competed against Balogun in the PL2 this season. So that would be a good signing if we can get him over the line for that Boro game. And we've also signed James Brown, who's a right back from Republic of Ireland. Rodney Ambe is in fact, he'll be back for the Boro game because he's suspended for the game against Hull. But I mean, he could be back. I don't know. There's rumours that he's off as well, out the door. So interesting to see what happens at right back. But I think that's maybe a discussion for another day. In terms of predictions, we are good at home. We're the best home side in the league. So as good a team as Boro are, I can see us getting this one done just about. It'll be one of our toughest tests at Ewood. Boro are a top side, but I think we can get the job done. I'm going to say 2-1 Rovers. Of course, thanks again to Johnny and the rest at the Boro Breakdown for having me on. Much appreciated, and hope you're all well. Cheers.
Thanks for that, Ollie. Oh, we've done a little shake on our little video stream.
The stream kicked me out.
But yeah, thank you very much for that, Ollie. 2-1 to Blackburn Rovers, and John Buckley and Ben Broughton Diaz are your two players to watch out for. How are you feeling about this game, guys? Because it's going to be a really, really tough game, isn't it, Tom? You know, the form side in the league, you know, top of the home form chart as well. It's going to be really difficult, isn't it?
It is. I think it's going to be our toughest test so far under Wilder, and you know we've had a few tough tests so far, and we've come through them. So I think if we can come out of this with 3 points, there's no one in this league we can't beat, regardless of form that they're on. That being said, obviously we're all going, and thinking back on the times I've been to Ewood Park. I don't want to jinx us.
Every time we've been, Tom, every time we've been together, Tom, we've got beat. So
I know it's going to be a difficult one. I mean, I've been in the I've been in one of the boxes at Ewood Park for a couple of games, and there was one in the Premier League where it probably should have been called off because there was like pools of water all over the pitch. Schwarzer actually slid out the box at one point, and then there was.
Did he do a Sol Campbell? Just kept sliding.
Pretty much, yeah. He slid out to get the ball and then just kept going. And then there was another one where it was the Karayol and Jukovic show, and we actually won that one. So hopefully it'll just be a repeat of that one.
Yeah, I hope so. Dana, how are you feeling about it as well?
Yeah, a bit fearful. Well, actually, I say that, but should we fear any team in this league? I mean, you see the mentality that we've got at the moment, and we are just riding the crest of a wave, and it's unbelievable to be a part of that and to see Boro grow and progress and to become this really confident side. And I have trust in this team, I really do. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Of course, as Tom said, we are going. The last time that I went to Ewood Park, I had a nosebleed, and we were late to the stadium, so that was nice. But hopefully, I'm having a nosebleed because we've won and someone's elbowed me in the face amid some celebrations. But yeah, there's confidence but wariness in this game, I think.
We can make that nosebleed happen at the Boro Breakdown.
Because we're sat so far up.
Yeah, probably. Probably. I mean, I'll pack some tissues in the car just in case you have that nosebleed on the way.
Because I didn't have any tissues last time, and I had to wipe it with I don't know, someone's burger packet thing.
Oh, I was going to say, you
just wiped the nose, yeah. Just got like someone's burger bun. Just went out
Give us that a second.
Yeah, well,
there you are. Just use that as the sauce. It'll be all right. So what's your predictions then? Because it's going to be a really tough test, and I think if you win this game, it's absolutely 100% definitely cemented on that we could be competing for the top two or even for the playoffs. But Tom, what's your predictions for the game against Blackburn?
You know what? I'm going to go with a really optimistic one here, and it's not actually based on anything other than like a dream, really. But I reckon it's going to be like that Brighton game in our promotion season, where both teams are coming into it in really good form, and we're the ones who come out with it with a big win. So I'm going to go 2-0 Boro.
2-0 Boro for Tom. Dana, what are you going to go for?
You know what? I'm going to echo Tom's prediction there. I'm going to say 2-0 Middlesbrough as well. I might have to look into Tony Mowbray's form against Middlesbrough as an opposition manager, because it could well be his Achilles heel coming up against us. I'm not sure. I might have completely got that wrong. But yeah, I think 2-0 for me. 2-0 Boro.
Okay, 2-0. I mean, if it was Dana, it would make sense because, Boro born and bred. Like, it might just he
give us
likes
the
Black.
win, Tony. You know you want to.
Yeah, like like what's the one defeat between friends? Like what's that? Like, but I'm gonna go with 1-1. I think it's gonna be really difficult to stop Blackburn from scoring. I think they've been so good offensively, and the form of his life, Ben Burton Diaz. Since he got Diaz on the end of his name, he's just like leveled up, and he's got like 5-star weak foot now, and 92 finishing on FIFA. So, he's just absolutely flying, and
He's gone from a magic carp to a Gyarados, hasn't he? He's had that super evolution.
Yeah, he's absolutely leveled up, just leveled up. But I'm gonna go 1-1. I think it's gonna be a draw written all over it, but if we put a good performance in, it'll only give us more confidence that we're going to be competing for the top places this season. But let's move to questions then, because every week we ask you guys to send us in questions from either on email at the Boro Breakdown at hotmail.com or on Twitter, and that's at the Boro_breakdown. But you can message us on Facebook too, and we've got a question quote at the end from Andrew Littlefair, which we'll leave you on. But the question is from Charlie. He says, how worried should we be with the EFL wanting to scrutinise our finances? Should Gibson leave if he goes against FFP after such an advocate of it? Tom, what's your thoughts? Because it was an interesting article that came out about Boro's potential finances and scrutinising. Do you think there's much substance to it at all?
I'd be interested to know what they're basing it off, because in Wilder's press conference the other day, he seemed to think it was a load of rubbish. And to be honest, I feel like it would be as well, because as it was said in the question there, Gibson's been such an advocate of FFP, obviously, where he's kind of like chasing. Well, he's chased Derby quite a lot of it. Don't know what the current court case is specifically about, but I don't think he would go against it. And obviously, if he had, leave and be replaced by you, like, I'm fully confident that whatever Gibson does is in the best interest of the club. I don't think he'd go against FFP for that.
Okay, fair enough. Case closed. Next question is from Borshot, and it says, given that Johnny Howson is in the autumn of his career and is out of contract in the summer, of course, is Matt Crooks a future Boro captain? Dana, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I can see why that question's been raised. But for me, I think sometimes it can be a little bit of a weight on a player's shoulder, and I just love the freedom that Matt Crooks has at the moment in his performances, and I wouldn't really want to jeopardise that. But I could definitely see, in terms of his personality, his overall likability, why that is a question. But for me, I don't know what it is with. I don't know whether anybody agrees with this, but captains for me should either be a defensive midfielder or a centre half or a goalkeeper. I don't know what it is, but they're the three that I feel comfortable with being captain. Potentially a central midfielder, but not Matt Crooks for me.
It'd be a bit harsh on Coburn if he didn't get it after.
I agree.
Yes,
I agree. Led the line, so well. He created chances, and like I said, like it was like Thor with his hammer, and it just signalled a goal straight away, and it was that easy, wasn't it? So it must be easy being a captain for Josh Coburn. It must be easy. Some people. But the last question of the day, and we got this from so many people this week. It must be about quite a lot in our messages saying, does Boro admin deserve a place on the island? Now, Middlesbrough's behaviour on Twitter this week has caused ripples across fan bases. The pointing at the Boro badge, of course, taking the piss out of Kieran Trippier, but then also the Celtic one as well. So, Boro admin, do you deserve to be on the island? Dana or Tom, what do you think?
I think so. I mean, the first strike and then the second strike is quite something. So I'd say, based on the fact that he's followed it up with another little jab at another club, I would probably say, yeah. I don't know how we're going to put that on the graphic, but yeah,
Just take a screenshot of the Twitter page.
Yeah, or just the Boro
Yeah.
badge. Yeah, you should fit nicely there, maybe behind Willow Flood and that lager.
Yeah, absolutely creased of that Photoshop photo of the lager, to be fair. Absolutely creased in it.
Very good.
But yeah, I think he does deserve to go on the island. So 2 tickets for you and your partner to go on the island. There we go. So the last thing of the day then it was from Andrew Littlefair, and it's not a question, it's more of a quote. He says, "What a feeling at the minute. The change in feeling I have again for Boro in just a few weeks is amazing. What a job Wilder and his team are doing. 3 not so great performances, but 3 wins. That's what it's all about. Nice to watch a game and have the feeling we can still win, even though we'll go down and aren't playing our best. Happy times." And that, I think, is just echoing everyone's thoughts of Boro's performances as of late. But that's it. His name is Matt Crooks, and teams just can't handle him. Oh, you know what? Let's do it one more time.
His name
It's Matt Crooks, and teams just can't handle him. His name is Matt Crooks.
He's 6'3" and we call him the tree. Hey, ready? Crazy little thing called Crooks.
This is the Boro Breakdown podcast, and that was our match day chatter in a pod.